There's an Owl in the Shower movie. Chapters 1 through 5.
Kira, Gracie,
Preston,
Jake,
Caden. By Jean Craighead George.
Our story.
Go.
Our story begins in the forest of the Pacific coast of Northern California in a town named Festa. In the forest, there's a boy named Borden, and his dad, Liam, was one of the best lumberjacks in the town. But he lost his job to spotted owls because there's a law that stops them. Then trees had to stop being cut down, or the population of the owls would become extinct, and no cutting down trees means no job for Borden's dad. Borden was in the forest trying to kill a spotted owl named Enrique. Borden, you that spotted owl in that nest. You're dead the minute you stick your head up. It was almost twilight. Borden thought of his father and yelled, "My dad lost his job because of you." The shouting had helped the pain Borden had felt when Borden's pop lost his job. Borden leaned against a young fir tree and recalled the owl hanging from the lamppost. Borden smiled. He identified the owl. He was a good shot. Borden listened to the sounds around him. A woodpecker drilled to its left, and above him a small flock of golden-crowned kinglets sang a series of thin, whirring notes. Borden wanted to look at them, but dared not. "Owl, come out. Come on out. I know you're in there. My dad showed me your home last year. The Cutters call you Enrique. You took my dad's job. Well, I'm going to fix that." A black-tailed deer got to him in a grove of ferns. Some distance away, in a Douglas fir, an owl awoke. There sat a beautiful spotted owl. He turned his head side to side, not to see but to listen. After that, Enrique took flight again, moving his head side to side, listening to the music of the forest. Above Enrique lighted on a tree limb above the nest. Enrique called to his mate. Borden clicked off the safety of the gun, but was too dark. "Nuts," Borden said. Borden found his bike and said, "I'll be back." He wheeled his bike down the mountain road towards his home. Enrique listened until Borden went around the bend and sped away. Then Enrique concentrated on finding food. Borden did not return to the nest as soon as he thought. Jimmy, his best friend, got him a job after school at Mike's gas station. Mike's had become the town's west side meeting place after the government ban. That is where the owl lovers ran into owl haters. They argued, shouted, and shook fists at one another. Both sides were convinced that they were right. Borden polished the bumper stickers that said, "I like spotted owls, fried," and left the dirt on the stickers that said, "Save the spotted owls." One day, Paul James, the leader of the owl lovers, went to the gas station and stepped out of his car and said, "Good morning, Mr. Watson." Leon didn't care. Leon and Paul James started yelling and snapping at one another. Paul James was trying to convince that we need to save the spotted owls, and Liam was trying to convince Paul James that he has a family to feed. 2 weeks had passed since Enrique had been hunted by Borden. It had been hard for the owl and his family to get food. Every time Enrique hunted for food, his family caught less and less prey. The shortage of the food unsettled Enrique's mate and the owlets were getting weaker, yet they weren't feathered enough, so the mother could help Enrique hunt. Each day passed with low food and more hunger. The owlets begged for more food. One night, Enrique caught nothing. A black-tailed deer crept behind them, but she didn't hear any flying squirrels. She flew to her parents probably afraid that they would attack her. She listened. She listened. She heard a squirrel, but it was too noisy. She also heard a coyote. She quickly flew off her parents' property. When she was flying, she heard a jay sleeping on a perch below. She quickly maneuvered to the jay and caught it and carried it back to her young. The next night, while Enrique and his mate went hunting, the owlets climbed out of the nest, sitting on the side. They listened to the music of the forest. Enrique flew above the forest. When he came across a jay, Enrique caught it and headed for the nest. But when he got there, his mate was not there to feed the owl. The owlets were out of the nest too soon. They would have fluttered to the ground in mid-June and taken short flights to low limbs. There they would have sat while their parents fed them for another month or until they could fly or hunt on their own. These young were off schedule. The owls weren't even old enough to get off the ground. They just sat in the rain. The young female owlet saw dry shelter under a enormous log and hopped towards it. A pine marten saw her and leaped down from a limb. Owlet feathers burst into the air as the pine marten killed her. The young male owlet wiggled under the arbutus leaves and sat still. Before daylight, the male owlet shook the rain from his wings, making just enough mother to locate him. She flew to the owlet with food. The owlet reached for it, but she didn't feed him. She hopped a few steps and dangled the food again. The owlet followed her until she herded him out of the flowers to a bush. She climbed up the bush and dangled the food. The owlet climbed up after her. The owlet closed his eyelids and fell asleep. About 4 hours later, the owlet heard his father's voice through the fog. The owlet tried to fly, but his stubby wings prevented him, and he fell to the earth. The owlet listened for his father. Suddenly, he felt a shake, and it was Borden. He said, "Hi," said Borden. "You are all alone. You don't have any spots. That's good, or I will shoot you." The owl wasn't afraid. "Now what do I do with you?"
There's an Owl in the Shower, chapters 6 through 10, by
Vanessa, Lily,
Owen,
Andrew, Lucas.
Do-do-do-do-do.
we going to do with it? Let's keep it. What do we feed it? We can feed it the chicken we got. No, that's too expensive. We can feed it mice. Upon arriving home from the riverside field, Borden pushed back the plywood cover on the owl box and peered in. He sighed with relief. Barty was still alive. Leon leaned over his shoulder. The owlet saw him, fluttered his wings, and called hungrily. Borden dropped a mouse at his feet. That ought to hush him up, he said. It did not. So Leon dropped another one. They waited, but Barty did not eat. He just looked at the mice, then up at Leon. His black eyes concentrated on Leon's. He cried for food. Why isn't he eating? Borden asked. Put the cover on, said Leon. Owls eat in the dark. Borden did. The phone rang.
Ring, 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 ring.
It was Jimmy Olden asking him to work for him at the gas station for a few hours. His mother wanted him to babysit. Sure, Borden answered.
Where's him on the couch? Go. Where's the TV? Go. Okay.
One night, when Leon and Barty were watching TV, they got sleepy. Then Leon said, "You're shivering." So then Barty perched on Leon and they fell asleep. "Borden," Leon said, "do you have a minute?" "I'm worried about Barty," said Leon. "What's wrong?" "Those furry balls he spits out every day, you've seen them." "Yeah, you can't miss them," answered Borden. "What's wrong with that?" "Do you think he has some disease?" "No," Borden answered. "He hates fur just like I hate liver, so we spit them out."
Start.
3 days and 29 mice later, Barty's body had fattened and his head no longer drooped. Leon put Barty's perch down on the kitchen floor. Barty hopped up onto it. He shook his feathers and sat up straight. Only the yellowish talons of his big feet showed beneath his pantaloons. White still showed from his body. Borden and Leon get up early and get ready to go to get mice for Barty. When they're ready to leave, Barty wants to come along with them, so they take him. As they were walking in the abandoned field while they were there, crows dived and swooped down, cawing at Barty.
Caw, caw, caw.
Finally, Leon put Barty into his shirt. Later, Leon put Barty down in his backyard. Leon said he had to know something about Barty. Leon took a few steps, and Barty took a few steps. Leon stopped, and Barty stopped. Leon ran in a circle, then Barty did. Then Leon hid behind a trash can, and Barty hopped around and found Leon. Leon took Barty into the kitchen. He said he'd take Barty to court, and Barty would follow Leon up to the judge. Leon said after that, he'll take Barty up to the chopping block and chop Barty's head off. He opened his mouth, but not a chuckle came out. A few days later, Sally was cleaning out Barty's box and came across a feather. She told Leon it was a hunger streak. Leon asked, "What?" "It meant," Sally said, "it meant he's not eating enough." Leon asked how she knew. Sally said she was in the ecology club.
There's an Owl in the Shower by Jean Craighead George. Chapters 11 through 13. Movie made by Liz, Rachel, Sarah, Ben, and Jordan.
One day, Leon was taking a shower with Barty.
Shh.
Barty loved it until he started to drown. But Borden and Leon saved Barty by turning the water off.
Shh.
After the shower, Borden asked Sally for her hairdryer. Then she started to dry off Barty. Then they had a conversation, and it went like this. The last things birds do before they fly is bathe. Fly? Asked Leon. Maybe this is a sign that Barty will fly soon. Out of town and back up the mountain, Sally said. He can't do that until the herring! Leon shouted. Well, then you'll have to dress him, said Sally. Dress him, said Leon. Put leather straps on his leg, falconry style. They're called dresses, said Sally. You put a leash on the dresses and tether the leash on his perch. He can't fly away. I suppose you know someone who could do that, Leon asked. Yes, Sally said. Well, I'm not interested, said Leon. Later, knowing that Barty was going to fly soon, Leon changed his mind about hearing Barty fly down the aisle of the courthouse. One morning, Leon put Barty on a tree stump. He tried to teach Barty to fly. No success. You make a great human being, but you're a lousy owl, Leon said. Don't you know that you're supposed to fly? Later, Leon put a sign up by the shower that looked like this. Remove owl after showering. Then, Borden biked out to the riverside to find Leon and Barty. Leon had taken the truck that day. He was not in sight, but Barty was. Barty hopped onto Borden's bike. Hey, you like this, don't you? Borden asked. He swung onto the road and circled round and round. I'm going to take you home as soon as you can fly, little Barty, Borden said. Leon came down to the riverbank with fish. Barty never touched the fish. He was flying! Borden, Leon said. Barty has broken his tail feathers. All but 2 of Barty's tail feathers have broken off about an inch below his body. They broke on the hunger streaks, just like Sally said Borden. Now what will we do? Borden said. Maybe he can fly without a tail, said Leon. He can't sail without his tail, said Borden. Well, we don't need dresses, Leon said. He's not going anywhere, and I'm glad Sally was going to make that, man do it. How am I going to set Barty free, Borden said. Who said you were going to let him go? Leon asked. I did, Pop. I found him, Borden said. I wanted to take him back to his home. We'll see about that, Leon said. Leon put Barty back up of the truck and drove off. Borden rode up to the high school to talk to Sally. They had a quick discussion about Sally asking Paul James for help about Barty. Then he went home. Sally came home and he followed her into the kitchen. At the ecology club, Sally asked Paul James about Barty. What did he say? Borden asked. He said when falcons break feathers, the falcons imp or graft feathers on them. That means they push good feathers into the quills of the broken ones and fasten them with thread or glue. She took tail feathers out of her backpack. Where did you get those? Leon asked. That man, said Sally, found a red-tailed hawk that has been shot. Who are you talking about? Leon asked. A falconer, said Borden. He told her how to fix tail feathers. What hurt him? Leon asked. No, said Sally. Let's do it, Leon said. I thought you wanted to wring his neck. Who said I was going to do that? The end of chapters 11 through 13. Thank you for watching.
There's an Owl in the Shower. Written by Jean Craighead George. Directed by Cameron, Sam, Caden, Donata, and Seth. Chapters 14 through 17.
Borden saw the spots on Barty. He looked at Sally. She saw them too. Borden said, "I'll just let him go tomorrow." "No, sir," said Leon. "I am going to take him to the hearing. I want the judge to see what a gentle guy I am after we fix his tail." "I know how to imp. Let me have him," said Cindy. "You know how to imp?" Sally asked in amazement. "You kids always seem surprised that I know anything at all." Barty now had a gorgeous new red-tailed hawk tail. No one would ever know he's a spotted owl now. He could finally fly. After Cindy finished Barty's tail, she went to go read the newspaper. When she got up to do something, she left it on a page that said, "For an individual or corporation killing or possessing a threatened or endangered species, the penalty is a $200,000 fine and up to 1 year in prison or both."
Dun dun dun!
Sally and Borden were on their way home from school and stopped at the Pizza Palace to talk about Barty.
Pizza Palace, yum!
Paul James saw them and went over to sit with them. Borden and Sally found out he paid the fine and is not going to the hearing. After that, Borden and Sally went home. When Borden and Sally got home, Leon rushed them into the car and showed them the ad about threatened or endangered species. He said he knew Barty was a spotted owl all along. He just didn't want to admit it. Finally, they got to the forest. At the forest, they were going to let Barty go. They looked for a perch to put Barty on. They found one. Barty saw his dad, Enrique. Borden, Sally, and Leon said goodbye to Barty. It was a sad goodbye for them all, but Barty was where he needed to be. He was back in his forest with his father. Then they all went home. The end.
There's an Owl in the Shower, chapter 11 through 13. Book made by Jean Craighead George. Movie part made by Matt. Okay. Leon is in the shower and Barty comes in. In the next scene, to dry off Barty, Barty goes in the oven and no one notices. After that, in the next scene, they start flying lessons. But Barty goes to the ground to walk like Leon. After that, in the next scene, Leon finds Barty in the shower, all wet, and the shower isn't running. So he hangs up a sign that says, "Remove owl after showering." In the next scene, Barty flies, but he falls and loses his tail feathers. After that, next scene, they get home and Sally starts talking about imping and how that might be able to fix Barty's tail feathers.